In a world filled with noise, distraction, and constant competition, the quiet ones are often misunderstood. People assume that silence means weakness. But silence is not weakness. Silence is focus. Silence is self-mastery. Silence is the foundation of unstoppable strength. When you begin to build your life in silence, you are choosing to step away from the crowd. You stop explaining your dreams. You stop defending your path. You stop seeking validation. Because you understand that no one truly sees your vision the way you do. You realize that every seed grows underground, unseen, before it breaks through the surface. Growth is not loud, it is silent. Transformation is not dramatic, it is disciplined. Most people lose their energy by talking. They talk about what they want to do, what they are planning to do, what they could do. But the more they talk, the less they act. Real warriors train in silence. Real creators work in silence. They don't need to announce their goals because their actions are already announcing their dedication. When you stay silent, you don't waste time convincing others. You use that time to build. There is a special power that comes from doing your work quietly. Every day that you rise early, every moment you practice discipline, every choice you make when no one is watching. That is how you build your foundation. You are not looking for recognition. You are building resilience. You are not chasing attention. You are mastering yourself. And one day, when your work speaks for itself, the same people who doubted your silence will be silenced by your success. Silence is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of clarity. It is the place where your mind and heart finally meet, where thoughts slow down and strength begins to form. When you decide to build your life in silence, you step away from the chaos of the world and turn inward to face yourself. Most people are terrified of silence because it exposes who they truly are. It reveals every fear, every doubt, every weakness you've tried to bury beneath noise and distraction. Yet, if you have the courage to sit in silence, you will begin to see that silence is not your enemy. It is your greatest teacher. In silence, you hear the voice of truth that cannot be heard. When you're surrounded by opinions, you start to understand your real priorities, your real purpose, and the direction your life is meant to take. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, silence becomes a rare and powerful act. Social media, gossip, and constant comparison have turned noise into a lifestyle. People announce their goals before they even start working on them. They seek validation from others before believing in themselves. But what happens when you remove that need for attention? What happens when you stop explaining yourself to others? You free your energy. You stop performing for the crowd and start performing for yourself. Silence gives you that power. It keeps you grounded when the world tries to distract you with temporary approval. It allows you to focus entirely on growth without interference. Because while others are busy showing their plans, you are already building yours brick by brick. The truth is that silence builds strength because it requires patience. It forces you to trust the unseen. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every day to check its progress. You water it, protect it, and let it grow underground. The same is true for your dreams. The most important progress you make happens when no one can see it. It happens when you're up early while the world is asleep. When you're reading, practicing, learning, failing, and trying again without telling anyone. That's where character is built. That's where confidence comes from. Silence gives you the space to grow roots before you bloom. People who live loudly often burn out fast. They talk too much about what they want to do and exhaust themselves with empty promises. But those who work silently conserve their energy. They move like water, steady, calm, and unstoppable. They don't need to prove anything, because they know that real strength doesn't shout. It whispers through action. The quiet ones are not passive, they are precise. They observe more, listen deeply, and respond intentionally. Their silence is not ignorance, it's strategy, it's focus, it's preparation for the right moment to strike with full force. Silence also protects your peace. When you choose not to react to every insult, every rumor, or every criticism, you take away the power others have over you. The loud world thrives on reaction, on conflict, on attention. But silence removes that control. It says, you cannot disturb what you cannot touch. The moment you stop explaining yourself, defending your choices, or justifying your dreams, you become untouchable. People no longer have access to your emotions because you no longer feed them your energy. Silence becomes your shield against negativity and distraction. There is also a deep humility that comes with silence. It teaches you to listen more than you speak, to learn before you judge. When you are silent, you observe details others miss. You notice patterns, behavior, and lessons that are hidden beneath noise. You begin to see how much of life can be understood without words. The world reveals its wisdom to those who are still enough to notice it. Silence connects you to your intuition, the inner compass that guides you better than any advice ever could. That voice becomes louder when the world around you becomes quieter. Building your life in silence also means accepting loneliness at times. Not everyone will understand your quiet phase. Some will think you've changed. Others will think you've disappeared. But what they can't see is that you are evolving. You are sharpening your mind, building your discipline, healing your wounds, and preparing for something greater. Growth often looks like isolation before it looks like success. The caterpillar hides in the cocoon before becoming the butterfly. The same is true for you. Silence is your cocoon. It's where you transform in secret. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need applause. It only requires consistency. Every silent effort, every small act of discipline, every sacrifice you make adds up to something powerful over time. When you finally step out into the world, your results will speak with a volume that silence could never match. That is the paradox. When you build in silence, your success becomes the loudest sound anyone will ever hear. You no longer need to announce yourself because your work will do the talking. The world may try to pull you back into noise. It will tempt you with attention, with shortcuts, with validation. But remember, nothing lasting is built through noise. Castles made of sand crumble when the tide rises. But a foundation built in silence, with patience and discipline, will stand strong against any storm. Your silence becomes your armor, your discipline becomes your sword, and your peace becomes your power. When you learn to value silence, you begin to move differently. You stop competing with others because you are no longer distracted by them. You stop rushing because you trust the timing of your journey. You stop doubting yourself because your strength now comes from within, not from the approval of others. Silence gives you control over your mind, your emotions, and your direction. So, embrace it. Let silence become your sanctuary. Let it be the space where your dreams grow in peace, where your mind sharpens in solitude, and where your soul finds balance again. Speak less. Do more. Show less. Achieve more. The quieter you become, the stronger you grow. Because in the silence of your work lies the sound of your destiny forming. And when the time comes, the world will not be able to ignore the power that was born in your silence. Discipline is the language of silent success. It does not demand recognition. It does not seek attention. It simply repeats the same powerful actions every single day until the world has no choice but to notice. In a world where everyone is talking, sharing, and showing off, discipline is the quiet force that builds greatness behind closed doors. You do not need to announce your dreams. You do not need to convince others that you are going to achieve something extraordinary. What you need is to wake up every day, focus on your path, and stay loyal to your routine when nobody is watching. Because in the end, words fade, but consistency endures. When you act with discipline, your actions begin to speak so loudly that you no longer need to explain anything. There is a certain beauty in working quietly. Every morning you rise early, you are creating momentum. Every time you practice your craft when no one is around, you are building mastery. Every time you refuse to quit when things get hard, you are shaping a version of yourself that cannot be broken. This is what discipline truly is. The art of showing up again and again, even when motivation is gone. Most people only work when they feel inspired. But those who build their life in silence understand that inspiration is temporary, while discipline is eternal. They do not wait for the perfect moment. They create it through effort. They do not need external motivation because their fire burns from within. When you rely on words and approval, you are weak. You depend on the opinions of others to feel worthy. But when you rely on discipline, you become independent. You no longer need to prove anything because you know what you are building. You understand that progress is slow, invisible, and often lonely. But you also know that every small effort adds up to something incredible over time. The power of discipline is that it compounds. What you do today may seem small, but when repeated for weeks, months, and years, it becomes unstoppable. Like drops of water carving through rock, your silent effort shapes your destiny. Discipline also teaches humility. When you practice in silence, you begin to respect the process. You no longer crave shortcuts or easy victories. You start to see the value of patience. You realize that success is not something you chase. It's something you become through repetition. Every repetition builds character. Every early morning and late night builds your foundation. It's not about how fast you go. It's about how consistent you remain when life tests your strength. The louder the world becomes, the more valuable your silence will be. Because silence protects the purity of your focus. The truth about discipline is that it is not glamorous. It's often boring, repetitive, and demanding. It asks you to do things when you don't want to. It asks you to sacrifice comfort, to say no to distractions, to walk away from people who do not share your vision. But this is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The ones who achieve greatness are not the most talented. They are the most disciplined. Talent may open doors, but discipline keeps them open. It is easy to talk about dreams, but it is rare to do the work that dreams require. The disciplined person understands this deeply. They choose progress over pleasure, purpose over comfort, and growth over excuses. When you live with discipline, your life becomes structured. You don't wait for things to happen, you make them happen. You stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility. Every decision becomes intentional. Every step has meaning. The silent builder knows that the world may not applaud now, but one day it will have to respect the results. Discipline allows you to move without noise, without distraction, and without doubt. It becomes a rhythm, a way of living, where consistency transforms into confidence and confidence transforms into success. There is also freedom in discipline. People think structure limits them, but it actually liberates them. When you are disciplined, you no longer waste time deciding what to do. You already know what must be done, and you simply do it. This simplicity saves you energy, it sharpens your focus, and it strengthens your will. Discipline removes confusion and replaces it with clarity. It allows you to channel your energy into creation instead of hesitation. And when your energy is aligned with your goals, nothing can stop your progress. Building your life in silence through discipline also protects you from negativity. You stop engaging in meaningless talk, arguments, or competition. You stop seeking validation because you are too busy improving. People may doubt you, mock you, or ignore you, but your quiet persistence will eventually silence them all. The best revenge is not words, it's results. And the only way to create results that last is through disciplined, consistent action. When others are distracted, you stay focused. When others complain, you keep moving. That is how discipline turns you into a force that cannot be stopped. Discipline also transforms your relationship with failure. Instead of fearing mistakes, you embrace them as teachers. Each failure becomes feedback, not defeat. Because discipline doesn't rely on perfection. It relies on persistence. You learn that success is not built on one great moment, but on thousands of small steps forward. The person who fails but keeps showing up is far stronger than the one who gives up after one setback. Silence allows you to face failure without shame, and discipline allows you to rise stronger after every fall. Together, they create resilience, the ability to keep going no matter what stands in your way. Over time, discipline becomes your identity. You no longer need to remind yourself to do the right thing. It becomes natural. You begin to enjoy the grind, to appreciate the challenge, to find peace in effort. The noise of the world fades, and all that remains is your purpose and your path. This is when you realize that discipline was never a punishment. It was preparation. Every silent day you spent working, every lonely night you spent improving, every moment you refused to quit was shaping the person you were meant to become. When you finally reach your goal, you won't need to say a word. Your results will speak with a voice far louder than any announcement could. The people who once doubted your silence will be humbled by your success. They will wonder how you did it, but they will never understand that the answer was simple. You stayed disciplined. You built your life quietly, step by step, while others were busy talking. And now, your silence has become your power. Discipline is not just a habit, it is a way of life. It is the quiet promise you make to yourself every day that no matter how hard it gets, you will keep going. You will keep improving. You will keep building. And when your time comes, the world will see what you created in silence. It will see the strength that came from consistency, The confidence that came from persistence, and the peace that came from knowing you never needed noise to become unstoppable. Detachment from validation is one of the greatest freedoms you can ever give yourself. When you no longer rely on the approval of others to define your worth, you begin to live with a sense of peace that cannot be shaken by opinion or judgment. Most people spend their lives trying to prove something to the world. They talk about their plans, show their achievements, and adjust their choices just to be liked or accepted. But the truth is, the more you chase validation, the more you lose connection with your authentic self. You start to perform instead of live. You start to pretend instead of grow. You build a life that looks good on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. Building your life in silence frees you from this trap, because silence teaches you that approval is meaningless if it comes at the cost of your inner peace. When you detach from validation, you stop living to impress and start living to express. You no longer care about fitting into the expectations others have for you. You begin to listen to your own intuition and trust it more than any external voice. This trust becomes your foundation. It allows you to make decisions not because they will please someone, but because they align with who you truly are. The greatest mistake people make is seeking love and acceptance from outside sources when they haven't learned to give those things to themselves. The moment you realize that you are already enough, that your value doesn't depend on applause, you become unshakable. Silence reinforces that truth because it forces you to face yourself, to understand yourself, and to love yourself without needing anyone's permission. Validation is addictive. It gives a temporary high, a fleeting sense of importance. Every like, compliment, or praise feeds the ego, but the ego is never satisfied. It always wants more. That's why people keep talking, posting, and proving. They become slaves to other people's opinions, adjusting their lives just to maintain that fragile sense of approval. But silence breaks that pattern. When you build your life quietly, you stop feeding your ego and start feeding your soul. You learn that fulfillment does not come from being seen. It comes from being aligned. You begin to understand that your purpose is not to impress the world, but to evolve beyond its noise. The moment you stop explaining yourself, a powerful shift happens. You take back your energy. You stop giving people the power to validate or invalidate your dreams. You no longer need to justify why you're doing what you're doing. The need to explain comes from insecurity, and insecurity thrives when we let others define our worth. Silence kills that insecurity. It says, I know who I am. I don't need you to agree. And that is the beginning of true freedom. Because once you are no longer controlled by external approval, no one can manipulate or discourage you. You become immune to praise and criticism alike. Praise no longer inflates you. Criticism no longer breaks you. You move forward with clarity and calm confidence. When you work silently, you also protect your vision. Every time you share your goals too early, you invite opinions, doubts, and energies that can weaken your focus. Some people will project their fears onto you. Others will discourage you simply because your growth threatens their comfort. By keeping your plans private, you preserve your inner power. You give your dreams the sacred space they need to grow without interference. The energy that others waste on seeking attention, you invest in progress. That is why people who move in silence seem so powerful, because their energy is not scattered. It is concentrated. Detaching from validation doesn't mean you become cold or arrogant. It means you become selective about what influences your peace. You still listen, but you do not depend. You still appreciate encouragement, but you don't crave it. You can accept criticism without being crushed and receive praise without losing humility. This balance is rare, but it is what gives you strength. Because when your self-worth comes from within, it cannot be taken away. You are no longer a puppet of other people's opinions. You are the master of your own destiny. Living for validation often leads to exhaustion. You spend so much energy trying to be liked that you forget to be real. You compare your life to others, question your worth, and doubt your path. But when you detach, all of that fades. You stop comparing because you finally understand that everyone's journey is different. You start focusing on your lane, on your purpose, and on your growth. You no longer measure success by attention or recognition, but by how much peace you carry within. Silence becomes the environment where this peace flourishes. When you are no longer distracted by applause, you begin to hear your true self whispering, "Keep going. You are enough. You are doing fine." Detachment also brings strength in times of failure. When you depend on validation, every mistake feels like humiliation. But when you are free from it, you see failure as feedback, not rejection. You learn, you adjust, and you continue. Your confidence is no longer built on how others see you, but on how resilient you are. You begin to move with quiet assurance, knowing that growth is not always visible, and that success built in silence lasts longer because it's rooted in authenticity. The irony is that the more you stop seeking validation, the more respect you naturally attract. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin. Confidence that comes from within cannot be faked, and it doesn't need to shout. It radiates effortlessly. Your silence becomes magnetic because it reflects self-control and purpose. People begin to notice the way you carry yourself, the calmness in your decisions, and the quiet strength that speaks louder than words ever could. When you build your life in silence, you start to live from your center. You realize that external approval is unstable. It changes with trends, opinions, and moods. But internal validation, the kind that comes from self-awareness and discipline, is unshakable. You stop needing others to see your worth because you have already seen it yourself. You stop waiting for recognition because you recognize your own effort. You stop explaining your dreams because you know they are real even if no one else believes them yet. So, detach from validation. Let people think what they want to think. Let them talk, doubt, and question. You owe no explanations. Your energy is sacred, and your path is yours alone. The moment you stop performing for approval, your power returns home. That power allows you to create, to grow, and to live in alignment with your deepest truth. One day, your results will speak so clearly that no validation will ever be needed. And in that moment, you will realize the greatest peace of all, that you never needed permission to become everything you were meant to be. Energy is the currency of life, and how you spend it determines the quality of your existence. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take costs energy. Yet most people waste this precious force on meaningless things. Arguments, gossip, comparison, overthinking, and distractions. When you live loudly, and constantly try to prove yourself. You drain your energy faster than you realize. But when you live silently, you conserve it. You stop scattering your power into places that do not matter. You begin to direct it toward growth, purpose, and peace. The truth is, energy flows where attention goes. Whatever you give your focus to will expand in your life. So if you focus on noise, drama, or validation, you strengthen them. But if you focus on discipline, learning, and creation, you become powerful. Silence helps you channel your attention to what truly matters. Most people don't understand how much energy they lose through small things. Every unnecessary conversation, every scroll through social media, every thought about what others think. These are leaks in your system. They leave you tired without even realizing why. The human mind is like a garden. If you don't consciously plant what you want, weeds will grow on their own. And those weeds are the distractions that steal your focus. Silence teaches you to become a gardener of your own energy. It makes you more aware of where your attention is going. It helps you stop feeding what weakens you and start nurturing what strengthens you. When you build your life in silence, you become selective with your energy. You stop chasing every opportunity, every relationship, every argument. You understand that not everything deserves your attention. You start choosing peace over reaction. You start choosing growth over approval. You begin to realize that energy is not infinite, and wasting it on things that don't serve your purposes, like pouring water into sand. You cannot create progress when your attention is scattered. True progress demands focus. Silence gives you that focus because it eliminates the noise that distracts your mind from its goal. Think about how a magnifying glass can start a fire. The sunlight is always there, but it only becomes powerful when it's focused. Your energy works the same way. When it's scattered across too many directions, it achieves nothing. But when it's concentrated through silence, it becomes unstoppable. The people who seem calm, balanced, and successful have mastered the art of directing their energy. They do not react to every situation. They do not explain themselves to everyone. They save their strength for things that truly matter. That restraint, that ability to stay quiet when others are loud, is what gives them power. Because silence is not weakness. It is conservation. It is the gathering of strength before movement. Energy is deeply tied to emotion. Every emotion you feel has a vibration that affects your state. Anger, jealousy, and fear drain energy, while gratitude, peace, and purpose restore it. When you live in silence, you start to become aware of your emotional patterns. You notice how quickly you give your energy away to things that don't deserve it. Silence teaches you emotional control. It helps you pause before reacting, reflect before speaking, and understand before judging. When you can stay calm in the middle of chaos, you are not suppressing emotion. You are mastering it. That mastery saves energy, and that saved energy becomes your creative power. When you stop engaging in meaningless talk, your mind becomes lighter. You begin to think clearly. Ideas flow more freely because there is no noise blocking their path. You start to attract better experiences because your energy is no longer diluted. This is how silence transforms your life. It doesn't change what happens around you. It changes how you respond to it. You begin to realize that peace is not found in controlling the outside world, but in managing your inner energy. The more energy you keep within, the more grounded you feel. You start to glow differently because your presence carries calm strength instead of restless need. Directing your energy also means learning to rest intentionally. Many people think rest means doing nothing, but true rest is about recovery, reflection, and realignment. Silence allows this. When you withdraw from constant noise and stimulation, you give your mind a chance to recharge. You return to your goals with clarity and strength. The quiet moments between effort are not wasted. They are necessary. Just as the heart beats in rhythm with both contraction and rest, your energy needs both action and silence to stay alive. Without silence, you burn out. Without stillness, you lose control of your direction. Energy management is also about boundaries. When you live silently, you become aware of who and what drains you. You begin to distance yourself from people who bring chaos and negativity. You realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is essential. You cannot create anything meaningful if your energy is constantly being stolen by the wrong people or environments. Silence makes it easier to let go because it reminds you that not everything requires a response. Not every comment deserves your attention, and not every situation needs your involvement. You learn that walking away is sometimes the most powerful use of your energy. Once you start protecting your energy, you begin to notice its strength. You become more productive, more creative, more peaceful. You stop getting tired from things that used to drain you because you are no longer giving them access. You become intentional with your attention. You start living from the inside out instead of reacting from the outside in. This is what separates people who build meaningful lives from those who stay stuck in noise. The first group directs their energy like a laser. The second group lets it leak like water through open hands. Over time, the habit of directing your energy becomes natural. You no longer feel the urge to explain your silence or justify your distance. You understand that silence is your recharge station, your fortress, your training ground. It is where you store your strength before you move again. People may wonder how you stay calm when things fall apart, but it's because your energy is balanced. You are not moved by temporary noise. You are guided by purpose. Energy flows where attention goes. If you give attention to doubt, you will strengthen doubt. If you give attention to progress, you will strengthen progress. If you focus on what you lack, you will create more lack. But if you focus on gratitude and growth, you will attract abundance and peace. Silence helps you choose your focus wisely. It slows the mind enough for you to decide consciously where your energy will go next. So learn to protect it. Learn to withdraw from unnecessary battles, from conversations that steal your calm, from comparisons that poison your joy. Direct your energy like an artist painting a masterpiece, carefully, intentionally, and with patience. Because the life you create will always reflect how you use your energy. If you waste it on noise, your life will be chaotic. But if you build in silence and focus it on growth, no one will be able to stop your progress. The power of your life is already within you. It just needs the silence to flow in the right direction. Stillness is the birthplace of power. When the mind is calm, decisions become clear, and when the heart is steady, actions become meaningful. In silence, you begin to see that power does not come from control, noise, or dominance. It comes from balance, presence, and awareness. The world today is built on movement and distraction. People rush from one thing to another. constantly looking for the next goal, the next answer, the next escape. But power does not grow in motion. It grows in stillness. When you learn to stop, to breathe, to observe, you begin to connect with something deeper. Your own essence. That inner connection becomes a source of strength that no external force can shake. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It is about doing things with complete awareness. It is the art of being fully present in the moment, of acting with clarity instead of confusion. Most people act out of reaction. They let emotions, fear, or stress control their choices. But when your mind is still, you are not controlled by emotions. You are guided by understanding. You can see situations for what they truly are instead of what they appear to be. You begin to respond instead of react. This ability to remain calm and centered when chaos surrounds you is what makes a person powerful. It means you are no longer moved by every small storm that passes by. You have become the calm in the storm. When you build your life in silence, you create space for stillness to grow. Silence and stillness are connected. One leads to the other. Silence quiets the noise outside you, and stillness quiets the noise within you. Together, they build unshakable strength. You stop rushing to prove something. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing validation. Instead, you move with intention. Every action becomes deliberate. Every word becomes thoughtful. Every decision carries weight because it comes from a place of inner calm. People who move from stillness don't waste energy. They act only when necessary and in the right direction. That is why their impact is greater and their progress deeper. Stillness teaches patience. It reminds you that everything in life has its timing. Seeds do not bloom the day they are planted, and neither do dreams. When you are still, you learn to trust the process instead of fighting it. You stop comparing your path to others, because you understand that rushing will not make you arrive sooner. It will only make you stumble. Stillness gives you the wisdom to wait, to observe, to prepare. The world tells you to always be busy, but stillness whispers that progress often happens in the pauses. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is wait with awareness and let things unfold naturally. When your mind becomes still, fear loses its grip. Anxiety thrives in noise and movement, but it weakens in quiet. In stillness, you begin to see that most of your fears were illusions, creations of an overactive mind. The silence between thoughts reveals the truth that you are capable, that you are safe, that you are exactly where you need to be. This realization brings peace, and peace is power. Because when you are peaceful, you cannot be provoked easily. You make better decisions, speak with confidence, and move with purpose. You no longer react to negativity, you simply outgrow it. Stillness also strengthens your intuition. The quieter your mind becomes, the louder your inner guidance grows. Answers that once seemed hidden start to surface effortlessly. You begin to sense what is right for you, who is genuine, and which direction your life should take. This intuitive clarity is one of the greatest gifts of stillness. It saves you from unnecessary mistakes and distractions. It aligns you with your true path. You no longer need to ask for advice or approval, because your inner compass is working clearly. You begin to trust yourself deeply, and that self-trust becomes unbreakable strength. Many people fear stillness because it forces them to face themselves. When everything stops, the noise in their mind becomes louder. They begin to feel emotions they've been avoiding. loneliness, regret, pain. But these emotions are not enemies, they are teachers. Stillness gives you the courage to sit with them, to understand them, and to heal them. Growth does not happen through constant motion. It happens when you are brave enough to be still with your own truth. Once you face your inner shadows, they lose their power over you. You become lighter, freer, and more centered. A still mind is like a lake with calm water. You can see clearly to the bottom. But when that lake is disturbed, when waves form from noise and emotion, your vision blurs. The same is true for your life. Stillness allows clarity. It shows you where you are wasting energy, what you need to let go of, and what deserves your full attention. It helps you move from chaos to direction. That clarity alone is a form of power, because most people are lost not because they lack ability, but because they lack focus. Stillness restores that focus. When you cultivate stillness, you also cultivate resilience. You stop breaking under pressure because you have learned to pause and breathe before reacting. You stop being carried away by failure because you understand that setbacks are temporary. Stillness gives you perspective. It reminds you that everything passes, both good and bad. You begin to navigate life with grace. You no longer panic in hard times, and you no longer cling desperately to success. You move through both with calm acceptance. This state of balance makes you truly powerful, because nothing can disturb your peace for long. Stillness transforms how you see the world. You begin to notice beauty in small things. The sound of wind, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath. Life becomes richer not because it changes, but because your awareness deepens. You start to live fully in each moment instead of racing toward the next one. This presence turns ordinary days into extraordinary experiences. Power no longer means controlling everything around you. It means being in harmony with it. In silence and stillness, you learn that life doesn't need to be forced. Everything you need already exists within you. All the strength, wisdom, and peace you seek are already there, waiting beneath the surface of a restless mind. When you stop running, you find them. That is why stillness is the ultimate power. It reconnects you to yourself. It teaches you that the most powerful person is not the loudest, not the fastest, not the one who dominates others, but the one who has mastered their inner world. So take time to be still. Sit in silence. Breathe deeply. Let thoughts come and go like clouds. Watch yourself without judgment. Feel the quiet power that rises when the mind rests. That power is not loud. It does not shout. It simply exists. Steady and unbreakable. When you move from this space, your steps become lighter, your vision sharper, and your purpose clearer. You become unstoppable not because you fight the world, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. And that is what true strength looks like. The strength born from stillness.